फुलका हामी एउटै माला नेपाली सार्वभौम भई फैलिएका मेची महाकाली.
In this video, I'm going to give you my general assessment of a legendary knife known as the Khukuri or Khukuri. The Khukuri might be ancient in origin, possibly evolving from the kopis blade used by Alexander the Great's soldiers during the India campaign. The kopis type knife may have evolved on the Indian subcontinent for a millennium until finally becoming the modern kukri that we see today. The kukri was originally solely a fighting weapon, but also became a common utility tool and had ceremonial and cultural significance in parts of India and Nepal. But for the last 200 years, the kukri is popularly associated with the Gurkha warrior. I won't get into the history and significance of the Gurkhas, but be mindful they're considered some of the fiercest warriors in history, and their most feared weapon was the kukri. The blade of the kukri has a prominent forward angle or curve near the middle section, and it has an exaggerated fat end section on it. And this puts all the weight forward and below the hand, allowing leverage so the blade strikes its target with just devastating power. The broad, thick blade on this gives the kukri the mass to release tremendous amounts of energy upon impact. The kukri also allows its users to thrust and slash with minimal movement of the wrist, making it a more powerful and stable grip through impact with objects. The curious looking notch right there on a kukri blade is known as a cho. No one seems to know the reason that this notch was originally added to this blade, but it seems to date back to many decades ago at least. And it's said that there's a 7th century drawing found in an Indian temple depicting a kukri with a cho clearly visible on it, but I can't verify that. One very popular legend has the cho representing the female reproductive organ, a reminder that it must not be used to kill women and children. Another myth revolves around the old Gurkha saying that a kukri cannot be sheathed until it draws blood. You know, and as part of that legend, if the Gurkha has to draw his kukri for some non-combative task, he would lightly, cut or puncture his finger on this notch before he sheathed his knife, therefore avoiding a violation of that tradition. But I find that, a highly unlikely reason to put the cho on the knife. Still another legend says that the notch represents a cow track, being that the cow is a sacred animal in the Hindu tradition. Well, regardless of the many different renderings as to why this notch exists, one thing is for sure: a kukri is not a kukri without it. All traditional lore aside, the notch does have a couple of practical purposes in the real world. It stops blood from running down the blade and onto the handle, where it could cause the knife to slip out of the user's hands. Also, the notch could be used as a stop during the sharpening process. The handle of the kukri is normally made out of wood or horn and is oval in shape and flares out at the end to prevent the knife from slipping out of the hand. Kukri handles all have a decorative ring or rings carved into the handle, which has some type of religious significance that escapes me at the moment, but these rings do facilitate a better purchase on the grip. Another distinctive feature on modern Tang-through kukris is the butt cap design, which is said to depict the third eye, symbolizing knowledge and helping the user detect and vanquish evil. The scabbard is made out of formed wood covered in goat or water buffalo hide. The scabbards on modern kukris all have belt loops or frogs on them, and the very old ones don't, because in the old days, people simply tucked these in their belt or waistline. There's two small knives attached to the scabbard of kukris, and one of them is very dull and one is very sharp. The sharp knife is called a karda, and it's kept sharp and used much like a pocket knife is. The dull knife is called a chakmak, and it's used to either sharpen the blade or to strike a flint for fire starting. Stories of bravery and absolute ferocity that Gurkhas exhibit when using the kukri are legendary. And more often than not, they're actually true. In 2010, one Gurkha fought off 40 bandits who attempted to rob a train and rape a girl. After killing or maiming 11 of the dirtbags with nothing more than his kukri, the rest of the dirtbags ran for their lives. The Gurkhas were even known to behead Taliban militants on the battlefield in Afghanistan with their kukris. For being the most recognizable knife fighters in world history, the Gurkhas used surprisingly simple and generic techniques. Simple slashes, hacks, and thrusts are the mainstay of Gurkha kukri fighting, with the main objective being to defeat the enemy with a single powerful blow. The Filipino and Indonesian knife fighting arts, which focus heavily on knife dueling, rely on speed and precision, often using concepts such as defanging the snake and using complex techniques like traps that require amazing hand-eye coordination. Even most other knife fighting systems focus on small, fast blades with repeated attacks to get the job done. The kukri is not a weapon that fits well into that role. The kukri is a battlefield implement better suited to killing an opponent with one single devastating blow. The kukri also doesn't take years of practice and countless hours of drills to master, nor does it require great athleticism or superhuman hand-eye coordination. The Gurkhas are perfectly happy with chopping the head off or disemboweling their enemy. The Gurkha also likes slashing the quadriceps of the enemy when the target presents itself, and this takes the enemy out of the fight for good. But the fearlessness and ferocity of the Gurkha is probably the real weapon here. In reality, Gurkhas are just as deadly with a rifle or a grenade, but the thought of a 26-ounce kukri coming at your face is what the enemy fears the most. Modern bando practitioners and other more quasi-martial arts have adopted the kukri as kind of a focal weapon in their fighting system, basically keeping the simplicity of the Gurkha's technique, but adapting them into highly stylized moves in kata. In the end, though, the kukri is an extension of the warrior who wields it. It doesn't require great skill or technique to use this in battle, just a warrior that has no fear and a willingness to attack with ferocity. Much like the famous Bowie knife of North America, the kukri is actually an all-purpose knife, great for survival, household chores, and personal defense. The kukri is a knife, machete, hatchet, hammer, shovel, and pry bar all in one simple and convenient package. The kukri has been used for centuries as a tool to clear paths through the jungle and for preparing firewood and as a general agricultural tool. Contrary to conventional wisdom, a knife made for sustenance living needs to be big and durable, with enough weight to effectively process wood for shelter building and firewood. And this requires a big, robust tool like a machete, an axe, or a kukri. Sure, you could build a shelter, process firewood, build animal traps, and clear jungle with a bushcraft knife, but you'll do it 5 times faster and burn a fraction of the calories using a tool like a kukri. And lastly, kukris were also used to carry out ritual, cultural, and ceremonial purposes. In Nepal, kukris are often used for animal sacrifice. Most knives that claim to be kukris aren't really kukris at all. Most knives made outside of Nepal and India are simply kukri-shaped knives. Their thin profile and short contoured grip make them more of a mini machete than an actual kukri. The angled shape of the kukri blade is only one small aspect of its effectiveness. The thick spine of a real kukri tapers down sharply to the blade and gives the kukri many attributes of a hatchet. Most Western kukri copies lack this important feature. The one exception, though, I feel, is the cold steel Gurkha kukri, which actually behaves more like a genuine kukri does. On the used market, a cold steel Gurkha kukri will cost more than a genuine kukri made in Nepal. And even in the world of genuine kukris, there's varying levels of quality. Most of the Indian-made kukris, like windlass, exhibit poor quality compared to the knives that are made in Nepal. Kukri house in Nepal is considered the minimum for quality with kukris, I'd say. And the prices aren't bad at Khukuri house, which is the main draw for most Westerners. Himalayan imports in Nepal makes the best kukris in my opinion. The quality, craftsmanship, and attention to details with the Himalayan imports knives are just a cut above the rest. But don't discount Torah kukris, which are also top quality kukris with a big following in the West. A genuine, hand-forged kukri is a lot more than just a knife. It's the embodiment of an entire warrior culture, a unique masterpiece that a skilled craftsman put a bit of his own soul into creating for you. A real Nepal kukri is usually blessed and sometimes even rubbed on a magic stone before being presented to its owner. They're made with care in a village forge that might be hundreds of years old, and you can't get that from a factory production knife like a cold steel. You'll also notice that not all genuine kukris look the same. They differ by time period and what their intended use was. Also, each individual kami or blacksmith has his own template and knife shapes that are specific to his forge. And let's be honest, handmade knives from a primitive forge are never going to look exactly the same from unit to unit. And here's an illustration of some of the various forms of kukris. Very old kukris, like this antique kukri, were made with a partial tang that was burned into the handle and held in place with a natural glue that the commies would mix themselves. If this handle broke in battle, this design allowed the Gurkha to make a crude new handle in camp. But later, kukris were made with a tang through design, with the end of the tang being peened flat against a decorative butt cap. This design, in addition to using glue, was more secure and gave the kukri that more stylized third eye look that most people like. And finally, when the British tried to standardize the kukri for their Gurkha troops, we ended up with a riveted full tang design. You can see that tang goes all the way through. And this design is similar to Western knives and bayonets. And this is actually a genuine World War II kukri right here. I can just imagine the Gurkhas running after fleeing Japanese troops swinging one of these. And like I stated earlier, many kukris are used as pure status or ceremonial knives. And, a knife like this would not be carried in combat, but it would probably be used for ceremonial purposes or in some religious rites like animal sacrifice. My favorite kukri design is the slender sirupate, which is probably the most common type of kukri used in Nepal these days. It's considered a better agricultural tool, and this version of the kukri is also often used in marriage rituals in Nepal. I like the sleeker design of this better than the common Budhuni military profile. As you can see, there are many styles and variations of the kukri depending on the period when they were made, the style that they're made in, and the individual templates that the kami uses in his forge. The kukri is the world's most famous fighting knife, wielded by some of the world's most feared warriors. But, as you saw in this video, it's also a great utility knife. It chops like a hatchet, cuts like a knife, and it can pry things apart. It slices like a sickle and has the reach of a short sword. It's not light and concealable, but no combat or agricultural blade is. And even if a kukri has no practical use in your life, the real kukris are just great knives to collect. They have a more profound history with ancient and modern relevance than almost any other knife. They're one of the few knives that are still made the old way, in a village forge by families who've been making knives for hundreds of years in the caste system. A kukri has more than just a history rooted in combat. It has a religious and cultural significance to it. So if you collect knives, you need at least a couple of real kukris in your collection.